Another great game, though, Dalton, at 3:30 on CBS is number 17 Tennessee at number 11 Alabama. Last year, it was an instant classic, man. 6th-ranked Tennessee beat number 3 Alabama 52-49. It was an absolute shootout. Jalen Hyde, I think, had 5 touchdown catches in that game. Hendon Hooker was unreal. It was the first loss of the season. It was Nick Saban's first ever loss to Tennessee as Alabama's head coach. Now, Alabama needs to beat Tennessee and avenge that loss if they want any chance of making the college football playoff. And Tennessee wants to establish itself as, the biggest threat to Georgia in the SEC East division. But ultimately, Dalton, what is the matchup that you're really looking forward to in this game?
This is a fun one. I almost forgot about last year's game, as memorable as it was, because you've got this game is going to look nothing at all like last year.
Yep, that's what I was going to say too.
This is not Bryce Young and Hendon Hooker. It's actually scary how similar these two teams are. Okay,
it is.
Let me give you some. Since week 4, all right, 4 games, 4 weeks, I should say. I think Tennessee had a bye week. These two teams are number 1 and 2. Tennessee 1 and Alabama 2 in defensive grade since week 4.
Wow.
These are over the last 4 weeks. These are the 2 best defenses in the country. Here's the difference, okay? Alabama is number 11 in offensive grade, right? Because week 3 was a real inflection point for both. Tennessee lost to Florida, and Bama had the whole ordeal at USF, okay? Since week 4, they put Milroe back in there. They're the 11th highest graded offense in the country. The problem is Tennessee is 78th. Joe Milton, over the last 3 games, has a 50.4 passing grade and 2 big-time throws and 6 turnover-worthy plays. They don't I talked about this after the Florida game. They don't schematically do a whole lot. They run down the pipe, they throw screens on the outside, and Milton throws it as far as he can. And you're just starting to see teams adjust to where if you don't give up that big play over the top, there's not really a whole lot of answers. They don't make any real throws underneath under 20 yards. To be honest, they just don't make enough moving the chain type of throws. Now, you got a lot of similar elements on this team, okay? James Pearce Jr., 2nd in the country in pass rush grade. Spectacular. Dallas Turner for Alabama leads the country in pressures. Kamal Hadden for Tennessee, 2nd in the country with over a 90 coverage grade, right? We've been over Alabama's secondary with McKinstry and Arnold and Downs and Key and everything they have. I think they're the best secondary in the country.
Yep.
Where this game, I think, will be won is on the ground. You have to avoid all of that with both of these teams. You don't want to be dropping back and having Turner or Pearce rushing the passer. You don't want to throw deep into these secondaries. I think the team with more rushing yards wins this game. You've got Jalen Wright, who's really, really good, 7.1 yards per carry. And Tennessee, it's a whole different mentality than last year. Last year, you had Hooker and those receivers, Hyatt, Tillman, gunning the ball down the field. They line up and they run power for the most part, pulling guards, getting right downhill at you. And Jalen Wright is the first down machine, no question. And to be honest with you, I'd like to see them get Joe Milton more involved in there. He's at 8.8 yards a carry himself. They just don't run him enough. He's got, I think it's 219 yards on 19 carries or 20 carries. Somewhere in there, if you include the scrambles, it's very few carries and a lot of yards. There is the point. They really don't use him a whole lot, even though he's a really good athlete. And Alabama's kind of the same way, where they've figured out, we've talked about, they have a bigger offensive line than any NFL team, right? They've decided they just line up 2 tight ends on the field, and they just put you on the sled over and over and over. And McClellan and Roydell Williams are both really good at finding the holes through that. It's kind of almost like that. I can compare it to how the Steelers kind of ran things when they had Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
Just line up.
Yep.
Double teams. And let the back find the hole. And it's exactly what Bama's doing. And off of that, you still have Milroe as a massive threat. And Milroe, have we ever seen a matchup with 2 quarterbacks with stronger arms than these 2 guys?
Dude, I don't think we have, man. I don't think we have.
You've got guys who, now, Bama's starting to hit their shots 2 or 3 times a game, which is big. But it's all set up by the run game for both of these teams. So I think the team with more rushing yards wins this game, and because McClellan's he's like one of those blue collar workhorse backs who just, it feels like, and even on the the rare occasion when they're missing blocks in these duo kind of schemes, he's really good at making guys miss in the backfield, making that one cut just to make something happen, make 5 yards out of nothing. I mean, we've been over Bama's offense a lot, and you have to. These are both teams. I think you have to put in obvious passing situations. Whoever runs for more and gets the lead first is going to have a huge advantage in this game.
Absolutely, Matt. I think that's a great breakdown you made, and yes, it is going to really come down to the run game. And listen, like we mentioned, if you are hoping for another shootout like last year, prepare to be disappointed, man, because this is not at all the same as last year. Bryce Young and Hendon Hooker aren't walking through that door anytime soon. Now, Joe Milton has filled in admirably, Jalen Milroe has filled in admirably for Bryce Young, but he's still not Bryce Young. He's still not the number 1 overall pick. Like right now, Jalen Milroe has a 79.2 passing grade. Young in his career had a 92.9 passing grade. Joe Milton has not filled in Hendon Hooker's shoes at all. They look like probably clown shoes on his feet right now, because he is 106th in the country with a 62.2 passing grade. He has as many turnover-worthy plays as big-time throws this season. We were all very excited for Joe Milton. In this vertical-based scheme, he has by far the strongest arm in college football. He's even said it himself. He could throw 90-plus yards if he wants to. So we were thinking about, oh my God, with how many deep vertical throws they threw last year, imagine that with the strongest arm in the country. And it looked great in the Orange Bowl against Clemson when Hendon Hooker didn't play in it. It hasn't looked like that this year. And Joe Milton has really, really struggled. And then like you mentioned, man, the defensive backfields for both of these teams are fantastic. I would make the argument Kamal Hadden might be the best corner in America right now. He is playing unreal football. We didn't talk about him in our midseason All-American team or our midseason awards, but he has really been incredible this season. He actually was a guy that Tennessee fans even let me know on Twitter. They were booing him sometimes because he struggled early in his career, and they were booing him and wanting him off the field. Now, he's the best corner in college football, in my opinion, right now. So he has been unreal. There are 5 DBs in this game who have 80-plus grades so far this season, with Kamal Hadden, Wesley Walker, Tennessee's other safety, Alabama safety Caleb Downs, and then, of course, Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry. And I'm glad you brought up real quick, I want to talk about this guy. Dallas Turner's going to be a top 10 pick. He leads the country in pressure, like you said. The one guy who I tweeted about this past week, and Tennessee fans love that people are finally talking about him, James Pearce Jr., dude. This guy, I think he could be a top 5 pick in 2025, man. He is crazy. He leads the FBS in pressure rate. He also is 3rd in pass rush win rate. His speed to power Dalton is ridiculous. We just to kind of spoil some of our plans for after the season is over. We are planning on doing an NFL mock draft, but everybody in college football is eligible, not just the guys who are actually in the draft. I think there's a chance, dude, that James Pearce Jr. is our number 1 edge defender in that all-eligible mock draft. What do you think about that?
It's entirely possible. You talk about a freak athlete getting everything done on the edge. He's one of those prototypes, man. I mean, we talk about these other guys like Latu and Verse, and there's a handful of guys who are the prototype. He's in that group for sure. He's really the missing piece from their defense last year. Last year they weren't particularly great up front, and this guy's emergence, man, he could cause a major problem in this game. I mean, Milroe wants to stand back there and hold the ball forever, and Pearce may just not let him. If he gets in Milroe's lap early in this game, it could cause Alabama a lot of problems.
Absolutely. And listen, we put out our midseason awards, but I also put out my midseason awards with finalists for each of them. Dallas Turner and James Pearce Jr. were finalists for the Bednarik Award and Nagurski Trophy, which is the best defensive player in college football. So I consider those two of the 3 best defensive players in college football. So Jalen Milroe and Joe Milton are going to be under pressure probably a lot in this game because Tennessee's offensive line has not really played that well, and Alabama's has had struggles this season as well. So ultimately, Dalton, though, who are you rolling with? And will it be as high scoring as last year, or are we in for a pretty low scoring game?
I just find this funny, these first 2 games, we talk about how similar these teams are. And this one especially, when I started digging into it, just scary similar. They're like the same exact team, honestly. I think you got a couple factors working in Bama's favor. I do think they have a quarterback advantage. Milroe, since getting put back in the starting lineup, has been very good. He's done everything they've needed him to do. They don't ask him to do too much, like certain quarterbacks in the country, but he's done everything they've asked of him. I just think of, you've got these 2 teams, defense, run the ball, take your shots, mobile-ish quarterback, especially on Bama's side. I think Bama's just the better version of it, and the game's in Tuscaloosa. Joe Milton, I think the one thing Tennessee should do in this game if they want a shot is run Joe Milton more than they have been. Bama's yet to allow a 100-yard rusher this season, and most of the best performances against them are quarterbacks. Actually, I believe the best one was Byron Brown from USF. He had the best rushing performance out of anybody. Bama's just lethal in run defense. I mean, it's the same thing we talked about Kirby Smart in Georgia last week. They don't give up any yards to backs. Neither did Alabama. I mean, that's where it came from, right? They don't give up any yards to running backs. And if you're one-dimensional against Alabama, you're going to lose. Tennessee has to, I don't know if it's going to come from pure luck or just making plays on the outside with the screen game or what, but there's not much in Tennessee's passing game right now that makes me feel like they're a huge threat to Bama. They're going to have to play spectacular in the front seven. Pearce has to get after Milroe before he breaks the pocket, and they need to force some turnovers or something has to happen in their front seven for them to stay in this game, because if they're one-dimensional on offense, it could get not like blowout super like 49-10 ugly, but like ugly in the sense of you're just looking at Tennessee, kind of like in the Florida game where you're just looking at them and you go, they're not coming back. Like they don't want to. They neither of these teams wants to, but especially Tennessee, they don't want to just drop back and throw the ball.
Yeah.
They just don't have that this year between Milton and the receivers. I mean, they lost two receivers in the draft. Those, part of it is Milton, and part of it is just their receivers are not nearly as good as they were. Like Jalen Hyatt is not out there, man. So I'm gonna take Bama. I'm gonna say 27-17 Alabama. Okay. I just think it won't look like last year at all. This is a different game with two different teams. But I think Bama is the better version of essentially what is the same team on both sides. I just think at some key spots, they're just a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is scary similar how similar these teams are. But yeah, man, I think Alabama's going to win 24-17. So almost exactly the same score that you had. But like you said, I think Alabama just does it better. I think Jalen Milroe is a lot better than Joe Milton III right now, which is kind of crazy. If you told me that in the preseason, I'd say you're crazy. Now it's pretty obvious that Jalen Milroe is the top quarterback in this game, and I just think Alabama's defense is going to do enough. And and it's in Tuscaloosa. It's not going to be in Tennessee like it was last year. I trust Alabama more in this game. So 24-17, going to be a low-scoring game. It's not going to be 52-49 like last year when Bryce and Hendon were basically whoever has the ball last was winning that game because they were scoring touchdowns at every single drive. Not going to be like that this year. It's probably going to be an ugly game.